Assalamu alaikum. Welcome, everyone. So, today we are going to discuss a topic that's often debated and misunderstood both within and outside the Muslim community. That's about gender roles in Islam. See, some people think Islam oppresses women, but some others definitely feel that it gives them special rights also. So, what does the Quran and teachings of Prophet Muhammad truly say? That's what exactly we are going to discuss in this session. See, when we talk about gender roles, it's actually a very important and big topic, especially if you see subjects like sociology. But here we focus on gender roles in Islam, very specific to Quran, Hadith, and the teachings of Prophet Muhammad. See, first, if you see, it's with respect to the equality in creation. Let's start with the basics. Surah An-Nisa, for one, that reminds us, O mankind, fear your Lord, who created you from one soul and created from it its mate. So this verse, if you see, that actually shows that men and women are equal in their essence, the equality in creation. Both are created from the same sound and equal before Allah in their value as human beings. So if you consider it in terms of value as human beings in front of Allah, both are actually equal. There is no such separation. In Islam, there is no such concept of one gender being superior to the other. There is no such things. Even if you look at Manusmriti and all, when it comes to Hindu scriptures, there are clear prescriptions and definitions which are given where male is superior, and you cannot renounce the world without having a male child. All these are very clearly given, but that's not the case with Islam. There is no such area where you're talking about one gender is superior to the other. Both men and women are equally responsible for their actions and will be rewarded or punished based on their deeds, as mentioned in Surah Al-Nahl. Okay, so we talked about Surah An-Nisa and Surah Al-Nahl. So in that, you can see there is a verse, whoever does righteousness, whether male or female, while being a believer, we will surely cause them to live a very good life. So that means there is no such, discrimination. If you are doing right things, both will be rewarded. If you're doing wrong things, both will be punished. There is no such cases of discrimination. But there are some misinterpreted verses are there in Surah An-Nisa. If you see, one of the most misunderstood verse in is that particular surah only. That's Surah An-Nisa. Okay, so which says, men are the protectors and maintainers of women because Allah has given one more, that means more strength than the other, and because they support them from their means. So this is actually I would say misinterpreted as well as misunderstood. In fact, this verse is often used to claim that men are superior to women. But let me clarify this. If you look at the context here, for anything, you need to know the context, right? Otherwise, you cannot, interpret anything. Whether you talk about any poetry also, if you don't have the context, you cannot actually define what it is. Just because of this Surah An-Nisa and this verse, you cannot say that men are superior over women. If you look at the context in 7th century Arabia, women were financially dependent on men, of course, and this verse emphasizes men's responsibility to provide to their families and protect them. So that's actually the context, and it's not about dominance. We are not talking about male dominance, the so-called patriarchy that we are talking about. It's about accountability. It's not that patriarchy. It's not about male dominance over female, or it's not about male have right over female and female is subordinate to male. No, it's here clearly about accountability. So the verse holds men responsible and accountable for ensuring the welfare of women in their care. So that's what you need to understand. And it's not that just because of this verse, saying that men are the protectors and maintainers, that doesn't mean that he's superior and the other person is inferior. No, Prophet Muhammad also stressed equality and kindness. He said, the best of you are those who are the best to their wives. So this actually very clearly show, you can just see that and clearly showing that being a maintainer means being a caretaker. It's not that you are the master and the other person is a slave. It's not that you are a ruler and the other person is ruled. You are maintainer means you are caretaker. You are protecting means you are showing that accountability. That's your responsibility. It's not that you are not the ruled and the other person, you are not the one who's a ruler. You are not the one who's a master, right? You are not the one who have the control over the other person. You are just a caretaker. That's what Prophet Muhammad is also talking about. Now, if you look at women's rights in Islam, Islam give women rights that in fact were revolutionary at the time, and still it remained like that. You cannot compare it with other religions also. So let's talk about that. If you talk about education, the Prophet Muhammad said, seeking knowledge is an obligation upon every Muslim, male and female. Okay, education is not just a right, it's a responsibility for both genders. So when it comes to education also, there is no such kind of discrimination. It's an obligation upon both equally. Again, when it comes to economic dependence, women in Islam can own property, can run businesses and manage their finances. Surah An-Nisa, again, for men is a share of what they have earned, and for women is a share of what they have earned. So what does that say? She also have the right to own property. She have the right to run business, can manage their finances and everything. Khadija, the Prophet's first wife, if you see, was a successful businesswoman who supported him both emotionally and financially. And when we talk about the inheritance, women have the right to inherit property, as again detailed in Surah An-Nisa. So see, the shares might be different, depends on different other aspect. But again, if you look at inheritance right itself, that reflect family responsibilities rather than inequality. So the person who have more responsibility towards family may inherit more. So that is not inherent inequality over there, right? So that is the way you need to take care of that. The person who's going to maintain further or having more responsibility on that family will be getting more share. That's practical also. Think from science or think from maths also, that's the same. Okay, now if you look at this misinterpretation of modesty, Surah An-Nur, it says something like this: and tell the believing women to lower their gaze and guard their private parts and not expose their adornment. What does that say? Modesty is often misunderstood as restriction on women. It's not like that. Again, we need to understand it by looking at the context. You're not, see, you are asked to do this. You need to guard their private parts, don't expose, and all these are there. You cannot take them in isolation and you can't interpret. If you look at the context, this verse emphasizes dignity and mutual respect. Men are also instructed to lower their gaze. If you see in Surah An-Nur, so here we are talking about women's side. If you are taking that verse, that alone won't do. So men is also asked to do the same thing, right? Modesty is about protecting one's dignity, and again, it's a part of mutual respect. No, it's not about limiting freedom. It's your dignity. It's for maintaining dignity. It's again related to mutual respect also. So in the same surah, if you see, men are also instructed to lower their gaze. Unfortunately, cultural practices often distort this teaching, and that led to forced, wheeling or restrictions on women mobility. These are things which evolve over a period of time. These are not what actually mentioned in Quran or Hadith or anything. These are coming over a period of time. These cultural practices evolve when society evolves. So these are contributions of society. So these practices are not actually rooted in Islam. These are things which comes based on the evolution of society. Over a period of time, these things will come, and that becomes normalized and then institutionalized. These are not real teachings of Quran. So when society evolved, there are certain things, these patriarchy, male dominance, all are something which is coming as certain values in a society over a period of time. It get normalized over a period of time, and this ranking and everything will start, male is superior over inferior, and it get institutionalized, and then it will transform or transition. There will be a transition to the next generation. So that's how it is getting spreaded like that. But that's not actually rooted in Islam. It's not real Islam. So if you look at women's role in society, Islam in fact encourages women to participate in society. Even during Prophet Muhammad time, if you see, Shifa bint Abdullah was appointed as market inspector. So Aisha, the Prophet's wife, again was a scholar who narrated over 2,000 hadiths and was consulted on legal and social issues also. The Quran, in fact, highlights the equality of men and women in worship and deeds in Surah Al-Ahzab. There is a verse, indeed the Muslim men and Muslim women, Allah has prepared for them forgiveness and a great reward. So in fact, Quran actually highlighting the equality of men and women in worship and deeds as well. The Surah, Surah Al-Ahzab. So the misconceptions are there with respect to marriage also. Some people, misinterpret Quranic teachings about marriage as well. Here I'll try to clarify a few points, especially related to polygamy. First, let's discuss about obedience in marriage. Islam advises mutual respect and consultation in marriage. Surah Al-Baqarah, it says mothers may nurse their children for 2 complete years, and upon the father is their provision and clothing according to what is acceptable. Okay, and if you look at when it comes to polygamy, Surah An-Nisa, it allows polygamy under strict conditions, but justice is a requirement. If you fear that you will not deal justly, then marry only one. So if you have, see, again, the context is important. That time, you are fighting wars, and number of females are higher than number of male. The present society we are talking about is different. Number of males are higher, and the sex ratio is skewed now. The males population is higher, but that time that's not the case. Wars and males are dying, so the male population is less, female population is high. So you need to give them a life for them also. So that's the context, and you need to protect them also. There are many orphan women, there are many widows. So because their fathers have lost, their husbands have lost. So that's the situation where Islam allowed the male to marry more than one, but the maximum four if you are just. If you fear that you will not deal justly, then marry only one. So the Quran actually acknowledged that most men cannot meet this condition. So that means, what is the practicality? Practicality is monogamy. Why? Because in fact, the condition mentioned is you should be capable of treating each and every woman equally, whether financially, emotionally, physically, in all aspects. So if you're capable of that, then only it is allowed. So what is practical, what is acceptable normally is monogamy only. So in fact, if you see when it comes to strict regulations, it's monogamy which is actually practiced or allowed to practice. Polygamy in certain situations, again based on the context. When it was allowed, the context is different. Now when you interpret, it has to be interpreted again in a different context. So that time the context was different. This time there is no wars. The male population is actually higher compared to the female population. So when you interpret now, it has to have a different interpretation. Again, when it comes to Parda system also, it's the same. So again, we need some more changes in interpretation. That again, I'll come back. Again, if you look at the actual Islamic teaching and the cultural practices, they're different. Many oppressive practices like forced marriage, honor killings are there still in Islam, and restrictions on women education are cultural tradition. These are not Islamic tradition. These are not Islamic teachings. These are nowhere in Quran, nor Hadith, no Prophet Muhammad teachings or anywhere. Surah An-Nisa commands Muslims to stand firmly for justice, even against themselves or their families. So there is no such concept of forced marriage. There is no such concept of honor killing or restrictions of women education or rights or anything when it comes to Islam. So my key points which I want to discuss here is Islam promote equality. Islam promote dignity. So you say you are asked to cover the private area as promoting dignity and promoting mutual responsibility and respect between men and women. There are misinterpretation, and these misunderstanding arise from taking some verses out of context, and or you are trying to mixing what you see in reality. That's a cultural practice which has evolved over a time. And if you try to link that cultural practice with Islamic teaching, that's when this misunderstanding comes. Islamic teaching is different. Quranic understanding is different. What is practiced is something which is evolving over a period of time. So that is again, this misinterpretation lead to another misinterpretation that lead to another evolution. So society evolved, this practices also evolved, and the oppression also increased. So women in Islam have the right to education, right to property, right to worship, and right to participation in public life. So women is nowhere restricted in Islam in true sense. So the Prophet Muhammad consistently emphasized the fair treatment of women. So it's not that in Islam we are talking about biased or discrimination or forced, anything. Nothing like that. So in conclusion, what I want to tell you is gender roles in Islam are rooted in justice and not oppression. There is clear mutual respect. And when we talk about that maintainer, it's a caretaker role. So the Quran and the teachings of Prophet Muhammad guide us towards balanced and respectful relationship between men and women. So the point is, you need to separate the culture, what is actually practiced, from religion, because what is practiced is what we created. This is culture. Religious is something different. So try to follow the actual teaching of Islam. So that's all what I want to discuss. Thank you so much. See you in the next session.